Hi everyone, Jeanette here with Vivo Vintage Designs. Thank you for joining me. In today's video, we're going to discuss paintbrushes, watercolor paintbrushes. And before we get started, let me remind you that all the products that you see in this video or that we discuss will be listed in the description box along with the links. So if you would like more information on these products, take a look in that description box. Also, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy the content of this video and find the information helpful. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to discuss with you 3 different brushes and how I started, the ones that I started with, and the ones I now use. So here I have, these are Artist Loft brushes. I purchased them at Michael's or maybe even on Amazon, I'm not sure. These are the ones that I use for when I started with watercolor. And now I use them for my alcohol inks because alcohol ink is very damaging to brushes. So you don't want to use your watercolor brushes with your alcohol inks. I just want to say that. And then these are my Princeton Snap brushes. These are the ones that I graduated to once I got more confident with my painting skills. And now this is a Princeton Aqua Elite, and these are the ones that I currently use, and I absolutely love them, and I'll explain why. When I purchase brushes, I like the round brushes, and I like them to come to a very, very fine tip. And I'm not sure that you can see how fine these tips are on the camera, but you can see that this one is a little bit more blunt, this is a little bit more pointy, and this one has a very, very delicate tip. Almost, it's just like one hair, it looks like, at the very tip. That's how fine it is. And I'll show you the difference in each one. So let me mix up some dark paint so that you can see here. Let's pick up some dark green and I'll add it here. Also, when I scrub my paints, I try to use some inexpensive brushes. I try not to use my watercolor brushes because that's damaging to the bristles of the brush, and they're not cheap. Some of them, like the Aqua Elite brushes, are the most expensive brushes I've purchased, and I want them to last. So I try not to use those for mixing my paint. I use some other inexpensive brushes. So I'll start by telling you that the Artist Loft brushes were good when I first began. I did find that you lose some bristles, and in some cases this part comes separated from the handle. So while they're good for the beginner, it's eventually you'll want to move on to something better. Okay, so I'm just going to wet my brush and I'm going to pick up some pigment. And the first thing I want to show you is how fine a line I can get with this brush. And to me, because I do a lot of detailed paintings and botanicals, getting that fine line is really important. So I'm just touching the paper with the tip of the brush. And then I'll push down and continue along. Just using the very tip of the brush. See how thin I can get that line. And when I push down, I want to see how wide I can make that line. And I also want to see how much paint and water the belly of the brush holds, because that will let me know how often I'm going to have to reload my brush as I'm painting. So you can see that I can't really get a very fine line with this. So let's do a branch. Again, I'm just trying to use the very, very tip of my brush very gently on the paper. But you can see I have to keep going back because my touch is so light that I'm actually not touching the paper at some points. So trying to achieve that thin line, and I'm going to create some leaves. and I want my leaves to have that very pointy end. So already I can see that my brush is drying and I need to reload. And again, this is fine for the beginner, but you can see that I can't get my line very thin. It's a little thick, but for practicing, this is fine. And now I'm going to do a green rose here. So I'm using the tip of my brush to try and get those little C curves in the center and making them wider as I go out. And I find that the bristles spread and create some wonky lines. And again, to practice with, not bad, but not great either. So that was the Artist Loft. And all these brushes that I'm using, that I'm demonstrating here, are a size 6. Now this is the Princeton Snap Brush. These were the brushes that I used when I felt more confident with my abilities and I wanted something a little bit better. And they do come to a nice tip, and they have a nice snap to them. I find them a little stiff. For me, I prefer something with less of a snap, and I'll show you how that works. Let me pick up some pigment here. So I'll do the same demonstration as I did for the Artist Loft. I'm going to just touch the very tip of the brush, create a fine line, and then push down. Okay, so the belly of this brush holds enough paint that I could make it across the paper and not have to reload. But trying to get a fine line is a little difficult. Let me pick up some more. The really fine lines that I like to use. So I'm just using the very tip of the brush here, barely touching the paper. I have to go over it again because at some points I'm not even touching the paper. So that's not bad. Let's see, because you want to create your branch and then your stems for your leaves. So you can see there's a lot of paint and water in the body of the brush. So overall, these are pretty decent brushes, especially for the price, because I think I got 4 brushes and it was less than $10. So you can see that there's still enough water in the body of the brush, or the belly of the brush, that I can continue to create my leaves without having to reload. So now let's try the Princeton Aqua Elite. These I find hold a lot of paint in the belly. And the tip is so fine. So you can see that I have paint puddling in the wider parts. That's how much this brush holds. And I've made it to the end of my paper, and I still have enough paint on my brush. And I don't know if you can actually see just how fine this line is. So I still have not reloaded my brush. Let's make some some leaves. Can you see how fine the line at the end of my leaves is? And I still have not reloaded my brush. So I even have enough that I can come back and add some veins. Let's see if I can actually do some more leaves on the other side. And these are all things that once you get started, you'll find are very important, because it's really annoying having to reload your brush constantly because the brush doesn't hold enough pigment and water. So you can see the difference very clearly here, and I'll bring this closer so that hopefully you can see how fine a line I can get with each brush. So here you can see that the line is, I mean, it's thin, but it's not as thin as I personally prefer. And that was with the Artist Loft. Then this here is with the Princeton Snap Brush, which are, you know, pretty good quality, especially for the price. The line is nice and thin. It holds enough water and pigment that you don't have to reload as often. And then look at how thin that line is with the Princeton Aqua Elite. And I was able to do both sides of this for these leaves without having to reload once. So those are things that you want to consider when you purchase brushes. So I do recommend these less expensive brushes for the beginner until you become more confident, and then you can try the Princeton Snap brushes, and then when you really want to create your masterpieces, try the Aqua Elite by Princeton. They're really good quality, and all these brushes are made with synthetic hairs. I prefer synthetic over the animal hair brushes. That's just my personal preference. You may feel differently, and that's okay. So I hope that you found this video helpful, and if you did, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you have any questions, leave them below. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. All right, everyone. Also, one more thing. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Vivo Vintage Designs. I always forget to mention that. All right, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.